Hey, everybody. Welcome back to a special council sessions. This is actually our only, well, right now, our first one.
I'm so honored.
Yes, our first Patreon only exclusive episode of council sessions. And I've got my buddy here, Cyber Ren, joining me. How are you, sir?
Doing good, buddy. Doing good. How you doing?
Doing good. Thank you for being back here. I get a kick out of doing these with you because we just get some deep dives into some of these questions that are clouding our, clouding the galaxy, right? That's what we do here on council sessions.
Yep.
So this episode is going to be centered around the Force. And when I was doing Inside the Force a little bit ago, I came across this topic that I wanted to put out there, and that was centered around Anakin Skywalker as a Force ghost.
Right.
As we know, he shows up as a Force ghost at the end of Return of the Jedi. And you and I have had discussions of, has he ever appeared to Luke since then?
Since then, yeah.
Of course, there's a big gap of years, 30 years between 6 and 7, episodes 6 and 7. We know Luke eventually starts another Jedi Academy. The whole thing with Ben Solo and Kylo Ren we know about. But does he ever talk to his father? Or does Anakin ever come to him to talk to him about things? We don't know that for sure yet. But there is a book coming out called Shadow of the Sith. It's coming out this year. And it is that story that we heard in The Rise of Skywalker. The one where Luke and Lando go searching for the Wayfinder in order to find Exegol. And there is an excerpt that's released out there. So this is not spoiling anybody, but there's an excerpt out there now that apparently discusses the possibility that Anakin shows up as a Force ghost to Luke. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, there's all kinds of reasons why Anakin becoming a Force ghost has thrown a lot of fans into some disarray. Because what we know about the Force from George and the Clone Wars is that you have to train to be able to become a Force ghost. Like, it's just not something that automatically happens. Because there was a big question mark when episode 1 came out, right? And Qui-Gon dies. He doesn't disappear, right? Prior to that, we've seen Jedis, Yoda, Obi-Wan, disappear when they got killed. So why didn't Qui-Gon?
Leia as well, actually.
Do what?
In Rise of Skywalker, we saw Leia disappear.
We did. Eventually, we did see her disappear, yes.
Yeah.
But she didn't right away because she had to wait until her son did. So that's another thing. So that's why we've come to this question that we want to talk about is, has understanding the Force become too complicated? Because when we, for all that time between the original trilogy and then when the prequels came out, I think it was 18 years, I felt like we had an understanding of what the Force was, right?
Yeah.
It was this energy field that connected all living things, bound the galaxy together. And Jedi were able to tap into that to use in their power. And then, of course, if you were evil, you used it in a bad way, right? So that was the Force. But now, of course, midi-chlorians got introduced.
Midi-chlorians, the wills.
You've got the cosmic versus the living Force. So, I don't know, Martin, to you and what you've come to know, and of course, talking to me a lot about Star Wars too now, it's like, do you think the Force has become too complicated to understand?
I'm going to backtrack a moment first, just to piggyback on your talk about Anakin's Force ghost. Did he ever visit Luke? I would think he has to. If put aside the fact that he can become a Force ghost, I think he has to have visited Luke. That's his son that he never knew he had. And he finds that out in his dying moments. So, well, he found out a little bit earlier, but I mean, they finally had that father-son connection in his dying moments.
Mm-hmm.
If Obi-Wan just shows up at will to just say, hey, Luke, and talk to him, and Yoda shows up to just say, hey, Luke, and hangs out with him, why wouldn't his dad come and spend time with him? He has to. And that's the only chance he's going to get to know his son. So I need to see those stories. I need to see a Luke Skywalker story where Anakin is visiting him and they're just having some type of bonding that they never got before. That I need to see that.
Interesting.
So, now, has the Force gotten too complicated? I'm going to say yes, because unless you're fans like us, like dedicated, deep diving podcasting fans, for the general audience out there, I think it's confusing when they find out about midi-chlorians, and the more you have in your blood count, the stronger the Force is with you. And wait a second, the midi-chlorians are taking instructions from the wills and passing it on to like that. Yes, it's complicated because, like you said, in Empire Strikes Back, the way Yoda describes it, it's this living force around us, the tree, the rock, everything, your flesh, your muscle, everything is bound by the Force. It was simple back then. He described it like it's just another type of, well, quote unquote Force, like gravity. It's gravity, something out there. We all feel it. We all can sense it. We all know it's there. And we can't manipulate or control it, but it's there. Well, that's what the Force in Star Wars is to me. It's just something like gravity. It was simple. It was understood. But even because of the prequels, because of the books, because of everything that we've already mentioned, it has gotten a little convoluted where people are starting to question it. And I think that's your proof right there. Is it too confusing? Yes. If we're starting to ask so many questions because we don't understand it, then it's become confusing.
Yeah, and I've come to still understand it. I think again, I think I read enough and dive into so many stories that I feel like I understand it pretty well. The big one for me was really the whole cosmic force and living force, and the living force is what we see in the movies and everything where people are interacting, and there's the force that, like we talked about, binds everything. The cosmic force is what you become when you leave the living force.
Yeah.
So the Force ghosts and everything beyond what we see and touch and experience in practical matters. But
well, even take that point, David. Ask general audience out there. Just say, hey, did you know that there's the living force and the cosmic force in Star Wars? I bet you 80% of people be like, what? I thought it's just the Force.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. I totally get that. I think you've got to really understand, and like you said, I think before we started rolling, is that it's like then you have all these different powers that get introduced as well, all these different aspects of the Force, like in the Rise or in the sequel trilogy, you have this Force connection that Kylo and Rey have, right?
Yep.
Where they're able to touch each other from not being, even anywhere near each other. So, and of course we learn that they're a dyad. And again, that's a whole nother aspect of the Force, right? There's so many different, and there's prophecies of the Force. So
projection
much
of the Force. Like, look at what Luke does in The Last Jedi. He projects himself across the galaxy.
Yep.
To almost to a physical form where he could fight Kylo Ren on the planet's surface there. Like, holy crap, that's a lot of power.
Yeah, and that's another thing about the excerpt that I read that, apparently brings Anakin back, is that in the excerpt, he has a lightsaber and
Force
ignites.
ghost.
The Force ghost of Anakin has a lightsaber and ignites the lightsaber.
Wow.
So
that
kind of threw me off a little bit because now we do know that Force ghosts can interact with physical objects. Two examples, right? in Return of the Jedi, when Yoda passes away and Luke is walking out to his X-Wing, there's Obi-Wan coming out to talk to him again, right? Obi-Wan sits down on a log, right?
Yep.
So he's physically interacting with the practical world, the living force, right?
And isn't there a scene, if I don't know if it was Obi-Wan or something, doesn't somebody, one of the Force Ghosts, brush aside some branches as they're coming through the trees?
He might have in that. He might have in that scene, yes, because he's coming through the trees. So you're right. So there's that physical aspect that they're part of this world still.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in The Last Jedi, Yoda summons lightning from the sky to destroy the tree temple, right? We're apparently holding the text. So
yeah,
they can physically interact with this world. So I guess in that sense, it doesn't really surprise me that Anakin has a saber and can ignite a saber.
Now, is it a saber that's in the spiritual world with him, or is it a physical saber still in the living world that he grabs?
No, apparently to Luke's description in the book, it is transparent still as well.
Okay, that's crazy to me.
Yeah, so Luke can't physically touch it and grab it, it sounds like, but it sounds like he can still get hurt by it.
How does Anakin bring one with him, or is he so powerful on the other side that he creates one?
I don't know. I start going down this spiral of, okay, wait a minute. Yeah. So then Obi-Wan could have come back and helped Luke fight Vader with his saber. Yeah. I don't know. It does start, things like that do start bringing up questions that probably it will never be answered, but it does cause some continuity issues, possibly, right?
And that could be a storyteller's just idea that, wouldn't this be cool? A Force ghost with a lightsaber. Never explain it. Like that happens all the time in movies and TV, right? So, but we also know that Anakin, as the living person, he was always inventive. He was always creative. So maybe he just figured out a way in that spiritual world to do something similar.
Yes. Yeah, and there's two things there. One, it is possible that the kyber crystal that is called to you when you're building your saber. I mean, there is a bond there. There is a force bond that you have with your crystal, and maybe that explains why a saber goes with somebody to the cosmic force. I don't know. But at the end of the excerpt, this is where the only thing that kind of questions this whole, because that's a pretty big reveal. And what I talk about on the Inside the Force show is that something this big, Anakin showing up, revealing himself again to Luke, something that big, I felt, I kind of questioned whether or not that should have been left for like a live action series or something, because not everybody's going to read this book, and not everybody's going to realize that Anakin maybe has come back as a Force ghost. So I think they could be missing opportunity for that. But with that said, at the end of the excerpt, it says that Anakin reaches his hand out because Luke is on the ground and to help him up. And when Luke grabs his hand, everything flashes to white. And that's how the excerpt ends. So then part of me is actually thinking, well, wait a minute. So is this like a dream then? Or is this like something that doesn't happen? It just happens kind of in his mind. I don't know. Maybe it didn't happen. So part of me is like questioning, because that's a pretty big reveal to even not only just put it in the book, but to release it as an excerpt out there to the public. Maybe that's enticing people to come read the book, obviously, but that's a pretty big storyline. So, so anyway, I don't know how it's going to pan out. I don't know if it's going to be this is actually what happens, or if this is like a vision that Luke has, or if this is a dream. I don't know. So I'm kind of mixed on what that means, but regardless, it just, once again, regardless of what it ends up being, it just brings up a lot of questions, and it brings up a lot of continuity issues and more complex aspects of the Force that just, it's just, we might be complicating this thing too much as opposed to what, a lot of people got upset when the whole midi-chlorians thing came out because that really changed the idea of what the Force is. So I think
it made the Force physical and not something otherworldly or spiritual based. Yeah, exactly.
And so I don't, it just seems like they are continuing to just add and expand this concept of the Force, whereas I don't know if that's really needed.
They should just expand the universe, the galaxies, and the worlds, and let us visit more worlds in Star Wars. Let us see more alien creatures. Expand that kind of stuff. The Force is the Force. Leave it as it was, because that's what hooked us. That was mystical. That was magical. That was wonderment. And we didn't need an explanation. It was explained enough. We didn't need any more. So they should have left alone. But I also understand, I can appreciate them wanting to expand the Star Wars universe, wanting to expand, intricacies and our knowledge and just, I can understand and appreciate that. But sometimes there's things that you just shouldn't touch. And the Force might be one of them. Just leave it as it is.
Very true. Yeah, I'm with you there. And again, we're also, in the middle of this new era of Star Wars, right? The High Republic. And there's already things about that that's all they talk about is the Force. There's all this talk about the Force and
oh boy.
Yeah, so it's definitely going to get even more complicated, I feel like. I'm not fully into that era yet. I've read a couple comics and a couple books.
Yeah.
But there's definitely going to be things in there that I think pop up and really change and introduce other aspects of it that we don't know about already either. So it's going to be interesting.
Well, and as we're talking, more things are just popping in my head. There's that scene with Leia when she gets blown out of her spaceship and she's out in space.
Yep.
Unconscious. And she doesn't die. She's able to use the Force and fly back to the ship. So does the Force just naturally protect her? Because she's knocked out for a few seconds.
Right.
Is the Force just protecting her that she can? Because anybody knows from true science fiction, the moment you're in space, you're dead in seconds.
Mm-hmm.
You freeze, everything. There's no oxygen. There's nothing. It's a vacuum, and you're instantly frozen. So that's part of it. There's just too many variables that have overcomplicated things.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that scene. Like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. How are they going to explain that one? Like, she's dead.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. The will of the Force somehow kept her alive, and then she used the Force to float back to the ship. So yeah, it feels like every era, and even the High Republic is probably going to do it too, but every era, the original trilogy, the prequels, the sequels, they keep introducing these new different aspects of the Force and the use of the Force. Now, the Force is what it is. I do think it hasn't changed as far as, what it is. What it is it is this energy field that, goes through all living things and it binds the galaxy together. And it's something that using midi-chlorians you can tap into depending on your will. So I think that part is good. But again, it's just the aspects of the Force and the use of the Force and the Force abilities. And they just keep growing and growing and growing. And that's where it becomes a little, and then of course the cosmic side of things with the Force Ghosts, it does become, a little crazy because, I don't think they can do it now, but who knows? But if they introduce a Force Ghost in like the High Republic era, then we're really out of whack because apparently no one knew about that until Qui-Gon discovered it, at the time of the Phantom Menace. So you really can't do it.
Did he discover
before
it as something new, or did he discover it as this is something we're able to do? Wow, no Jedi's done this for hundreds of years. Like,
See,
how
that's
does he discover it? Yeah.
Yeah, no one knows. No one knows. You know, there's those episodes with Yoda, you know, where he learns it with the what's called the priestesses
In Clone Wars.
in Clone Wars.
Yeah.
So yes, they've been around. So the ability has been there. So it probably makes sense that somebody prior to Qui-Gon knew, and maybe it was just a lost art or a lost lesson that never got to every Jedi. But again, if they go down this road, Force healing is another one. Yeah,
sorry,
But if they go down this road of the cosmic force being a part of, you know, a part of the Jedi over a course of thousands of years, you know, then that's something else that is not really been expected, I don't think, or will be expected, I think. So,
yeah.
It's.
I mentioned Force healing. Sorry, I kind of interrupted you there. That's something we didn't see until Grogu and then Rey. So, is that a new thing, or is that something that's been around? Again, another lost art.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Is there's Jedi that can do things, and then there's Jedi that can't do those things. Right? There's some Jedi that have premonition abilities. They can see the future. Others can't. Right. So why is that? I don't know. You know, some can force heal, some can't.
It's your midi-chlorian count.
I guess. You know, I mean, Yoda's got the most, but he can't do those things. You know, at least we don't know they can. So it's almost like being a mutant, right? In X-Men, like, you know, everybody's a mutant, but only certain you have this ability, this has this ability.
Yeah.
You know, the Force almost, it feels like, chooses certain people to have certain abilities. I don't know. At least I don't feel like I've read anything or seen anything that kind of tells us that somebody can learn an ability. I mean, they can all learn to fight. They can all learn to tune into the Force more. Yeah. But if you don't have the ability to heal, can you learn it? I don't know if that's possible. Right? Again, further complicating why. Why can't you? Right?
Yeah, so true.
So, anyway, I don't know if we answered the question. I mean, I think you maybe have answered it, right? That it is complicated?
Yeah, it is. Well, I kind of split my answer. It's for you and me, maybe not so much, because we deep dive into the stuff to understand it. We love it so much that we want to understand it. But I think for general audiences, it is too complicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I even know just talking to just regular friends out there that aren't as big of fans of that, they're confused by the midi-chlorians. They're confused by the Force abilities. Why can he do it and she can't, like you've just said? So I already know it's confusing to people that aren't super deep fans like we are.
Yeah. And I think the cosmic side of things, like the Force Ghost stuff, I really think that is just going to continue to get confusing, because unless you just come out somehow and say, look, it's not all about the training side of things. Maybe it's just certain ones can, certain ones can't. You know, I don't know. It's because the fact that Luke and Leia show up at the end of The Rise of Skywalker, how did they train? You know, when did they train about that? How did they know about the training with that? Maybe Yoda came and told them, I guess. I mean, that makes sense. But Anakin's the big one. How does Anakin become a Force Ghost? Is it because if you redeem yourself, you're automatically taking into the cosmic force, you know, when you die?
Well, that's why I thought it always seemed to be a light side Force user, or the only you don't see dark side Force ghosts.
No, they definitely don't have them. At least not yet.
Is it something to do with being on the light side too?
Right. Yeah. I think it has to be. Well, you know, Yoda, that's what kind of Yoda's training was partly. You have to, in order to do it, you have to defeat the darkness that is in you, because everybody does have darkness.
Yeah.
So that's why there's that scene where he's fighting himself, you know, So that's part of it. But that's what I'm saying. Like Luke and Leia, did they go through that training? Doesn't seem like it. Anakin surely didn't, unless he did it when he redeemed himself.
Yeah.
But
that whole scene, that scene you're talking about at the very end of Rise of Skywalker, it still drives me crazy. I think they meant it for it to be more, because Luke and Leia show up on this widescreen image. They're way off on the side. There's room for all these other Force ghosts to show up, and everybody, all the voices that we heard, that another Force ability empowered Rey in her final fight with the Emperor there. They all gave her power so she could overcome him. There was room for all of them to show up on that screen, and I think they cut it. I think they changed their mind, said, nope, just show Luke and Leia, and that's why they're way off on the side.
Yeah. That's true. That could be it. I also saw, did you ever see there was a fan cut of like when Rey is rising, all these voices, that the actual Force ghost, they show up there.
Someone created that? Wow,
yeah.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, if you go to YouTube, you can kind of find it. But like like Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka and Kanan and all these Mace, all these people, just like whoever's talking, like they show up and they're all behind Rey, like, saying we're all behind you kind of thing. So, cool. Could, if JJ would have done that, would have worked? I guess. But I mean, the voices were really crazy to hear.
Yeah.
Especially bringing people like Ashley Eckstein back and Freddie Prinze Jr. and of course you had Hayden and all that. So Obi-Wan, you had both Obi-Wans. They used Alec and Ewan. So anyway, it has definitely become complicated, and I think
that's your answer too.
Yeah, totally. And I actually think, unfortunately, it's going to get more and more complicated.
More and more, yeah.
Yeah, as they keep expanding stories and especially go into different eras, like the High Republic. I think there's just going to be just new aspects of it that keep, and I think partially, part of it is storytelling. I think storytellers want to always try to change it up a little bit just to kind of keep it fresh. You know what I mean? But unfortunately, I think it could have a different effect to most, which is just really confusing people.
Well, you know what it's like? Here's an analogy for it. It's like when you paint something and you're like, I want to touch it up. Add a bit more. Oh, no, I got to touch this more. Add a little bit more. No. And before you know it, after 5 or 6 touch-ups, it's darker or different or a different color. You've now ruined it to a point where it's like, it's done. You can't fix it because you've over-touched it. So this is what I see happening with the Force. They keep adding, and now it's going to get so convoluted. We're going to be like, what is the Force anymore? I don't get it.
Right. That's true. This is something I want to probably end up coming back to at some point, because this is interesting, because this is something you can come back to and revisit every couple of years to say, okay, has it become more complicated, or has it become more, maybe it has become simplified? I don't know.
Yeah.
But right now, I think it is. There's a lot out there about the Force, and it is hard to. That's why you got to listen to shows like ours to really understand what the Force is.
Tear it apart for you. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Cyber Ren, for talking Force with me. Of course.
Love it, man. I love that. Force is your favorite topic. I love getting into these things with you.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. So if you haven't already, the Mandalore podcast is also out there, where we talk about all the Disney Plus series out there, deep dives into those. So check out those. Go to Mandalore on Libsyn. We got a Facebook group. Of course, the Mandalore pod at gmail.com if you want to send in feedback and be on the show.
Yes. Mandalore podcast at gmail.com.
Oh, Mandalore podcast at gmail. The full thing.
Yeah.
Type
Our
out
Twitter
the
account is
thing.
the Mandalore pod.
That's right.
Yeah. Yep.
That's right. Follow us there. Of course, Inside the Force. We're on all the podcast feeds as well on YouTube. Just hit that subscribe. We're also on Patreon. That's where you're watching this. If you're watching this, hopefully. I don't know if I have Patreons by now, but but you are exclusive for this. So this is for you guys. more content coming for there. And of course, the rest of some of the stuff will be public on YouTube as well still.
Cool.
Again, thank you, Cyber Ren. Talk soon, okay?
Yeah, man. Hey, I'm honored. Thanks for having me on your show. Your first Patreon show.
That's right.
Love it.
That's right.
All right.
Have a great rest of your week, everybody. I'm Dave. May the Force be with you.